What's happening, everybody? Got a pretty fascinating multi-instrumentalist and all-around super interesting guy in Nate Wood. Nate can be seen in his four-piece one-man band, fOUR, where he splits drum, bass, keys, and vocal duties. And if you haven't seen it, it is absolutely amazing. Also have noticed that he's seemingly simultaneously playing all the aforementioned. And if that wasn't enough, the performances on this new fOUR record are all one live take. No overdubs, no computers, which is just insane. But we get into the process of creating the music for fOUR, his work with Peabody, Wayne Krantz, Tigran Hamasyan, and more. Plus his obsession with the band Death early on, and his tendency to jump right in the fire, so to speak, with generally advanced music. Plus his super musical family and the many lessons learned from his parents. And a whole lot more. Be sure to check out his work with fOUR and Peabody, as well as any clinics, etc. Links in the description for all that goodness. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking at releasing vinyl, go on over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com to look at the myriad vinyl coloring, packaging, mastering, electroplating, lacquer cutting options, as well as a real-time quote generator. And they print both 12 and 7-inch records, as well as 150 and 180 gram variants. So check them out. And that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com, y'all. Crash Bang Boom is available on SoundCloud, as well as iTunes podcasts, as well as my YouTube page, Stitcher, and more. Check out my Instagram and Facebook pages and give them a like, a subscription, a glowing review, a 5-star rating, whatever works for you. It'd be greatly appreciated. So here we go. The uber-talented multi-instrumentalist and killer drummer and all-around super cool guy to talk to. Damn, I had a good time talking to this guy and picking his brain as to the madness he creates. Yeah, you're right. Nate Wood. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Nate Wood, what's happening, man? How you doing?
Hi, how's it going?
It's going better now that I have the record button engaged.
Oh, man. So close.
Wow.
You almost nailed it the first time.
I would have been quite sad if we had done the entire thing and not recorded any of it. So better to catch it within the first minute.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, major
Totally.
fail.
Yeah.
Pasic Drum Convention, you just got back from it out in Indianapolis. I know Nate Smith, Zach Danziger, some other guys were out there. How's your experience going out there and doing that thing?
It was cool. I kind of wanted to see more stuff, but I got in the night before I played, and I got there after like Zach finished, unfortunately, and it was over. The whole thing was over for that day. And then I played the next day, and then I had to leave the day after because I had to come back and do some gigs, some fOUR gigs. So
just blowing in, blowing out.
Yeah, pretty much. So I got to see. I think the only thing I saw was Cindy Blackman. I think that was all I got to see.
Cool. I never got to see her like live with Santana. In fact, I've never. Did she also play with Lenny Kravitz?
She did, yeah. Yeah,
on.
for kind of a long time, I think.
Yeah, it's just killer drummer. I would have
Killer
liked to have seen
drummer.
that.
Yeah, total Tony Williams vibe. Like,
Right.
exact same setup, black dots. I got to, like, hit the drums they had supplied her backstage. They had black dots top and bottom, but they're amazing. So
Really?
So good.
Was
yeah.
her kit yellow?
It wasn't yellow. I think she does do that sometimes, but this was like a tangerine sparkle or something. It was
Right
pretty
on.
sick.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What did you perform out there?
I did 4, yeah. I've been doing a lot of these drum festivals now. I think, well, a lot for me is I've done 3 this year, and I've done 0 in any previous year. So
Okay.
I kind of just have started doing it, and I've started doing like in-store clinics and school clinics, and it's all centered around fOUR because fOUR is very drum-centric, but it's also something that not many people do. So
I'll say.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a full package, it's destined to be enjoyed by some.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I marvel at it when I see it in action. For those of you listening to this who may not understand what we're even referencing here, if you'd like to explain what it is that you do, it's a four-piece one-man band.
Yeah, it's a one-man band. The idea is no laptop, no sequencers outside the ones in the analog synths that I'm using, which only allow for 16 steps. So everything is performed in real time. It's a drum set, an electric bass strapped to my back that I'm playing with my left hand, 4 different synths, and a vocal mic. And I'm just trying to play them all at the same time. And the music is like half instrumental and half singing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of improvisation and a lot of drumming.
It's an incredible thing to see, and I'll certainly include links for those that are not familiar with it so they can see it. But one thing that I did want to tell you, and congrats in that regard, is that usually I feel like with what you're doing, it would almost come with an asterisk when listening to it. Like, it's good for a guy that's playing 4 instruments simultaneously.
Yeah, right.
But I think the major feat of it is in listening to it, if I didn't even go in, if I went to it not even knowing what I know about it, I'd still enjoy it. So I think you somehow managed to create something that is still exists within itself without being dependent upon the process in which it was created.
Thanks.
Which is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the goal, of course. And you know, it's really great to hear that from you, and I've heard it from a couple other friends. I have a friend this guy Stefan Diethelm, that he's in Muri, Switzerland. He actually brought me there for my first European fOUR gig.
Nice.
And he said he played a singing song off the fOUR record to his students, and he was like, okay, what does this band look like? How do they dress? You know, and he said, this band, you know. And then he was like, the big reveal, ta-da, it's one person.
Wow.
But yeah, so it was, you know, it's cool that it can fool people. And that's kind of, I mean, the idea was that I wanted it to be visual, and I'm realizing now that we kind of need music to be visual in order to enjoy it, especially the younger generation, because now we're just looking at our screens all the time.
Right.
And so it has to be interacting with that sense too. So I had really shied away from kind of videoing myself playing drums or having like a social media presence or any of that stuff or YouTube stuff. But I realized that it's kind of a necessary component of music now. So I kind of embraced it with fOUR, you know. But when I was mixing the record without the video, I was pleasantly surprised that, like, oh, I still enjoy this. You know? So that is
absolutely
so thank you.
Impressive.
Yeah.
When you've done gigs across the pond or just outside the country or whatever, I feel like the music that you do within that project is pretty specific instrumentally. So how do you work around? Do you have the exact same synths? And
I
the
bring
patches
everything.
You do. So you ship it.
I just put it in suitcases. It's just check it under the plane. I have 2 large Samsonite suitcases.
Okay.
One of them fits all of my synths, my keyboard stands, my vocal mic, and the other one is like my cymbals and my bass pedals and my clothes.
Right.
And then I have a bass on my back and a computer bag, and that's it.
Wow.
And I can travel the world with that. And all I need is a drum set. And I also mix the live show myself.
God, dude.
Because I have in-ears, so I can just give them a stereo send, and we're ready to do a show. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, it's interesting. You know, I think I will talk a little bit about this as well, but I talk a lot about sort of I think about fusion drummers and what sort of the modern fusion is.
Yeah.
And I think modern fusion is now informed by the reverse engineering of electronic music and how that's influenced. So that's
100%.
become part of our vocabulary, and I can hear that in what you do.
Yeah.
But also in what you do, you kind of did like almost a reverse automation of yourself in a sense, you know, because you could have just done that electronically.
Yeah.
But instead, you simultaneously did it live yourself.
Yeah.
And it's the ramifications of that are kind of cool in this modern time. Like we were talking about, where we're so dependent on our devices and so disconnected.
Right.
And it's nice to see that live, you know,
Right.
the nature of it.
That's all things that I thought about. And I've had like a little bit of an itch to make electronic music for a while, but I can't do it. I can't sit down and enter information like that. It just doesn't work. I'm a player.
I'm the inverse of you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how a lot of electronic musicians are. That's a musical interface for them. If they see like a string of MIDI, it's like, this is music.
Right.
And for me, it's just, I'm too impatient. Like, I want to just play it because I can play it. So I've been playing it for my whole life.
Right.
So this was like the perfect thing of like, oh yeah, now I can make electronic music, but I can play it. So it kind of solved all my problems in a way.
Right. Going back to, I guess, the reverse engineering or the electronic influence in drummers, I know like Jojo Mayer and Zach Danziger, when he was here in New York, he's out in LA now, right?
He is, yeah.
I think, would you say that those guys were kind of a little bit at the forefront of
They were
ushering that in?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I was a huge fan of Zach before he was doing that.
Like
and
the
then,
Michelle Camilo?
Wayne Krantz.
Or Wayne Krantz,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that
and
was
then
like
you ended up...
That was the game changer for me when I heard Zach with Wayne. It was like, oh, this is like the next step in drumming. And then I followed. I think I had his Boomish record, which I really liked too. And
Super
that was
cool.
Kind of, that was kind of like, that was more electronic. Kind of more at the time, more modern playing and music and all that stuff. But the guy to me that was the spark was Deantoni Parks.
He's great.
Yeah, he was like I wasn't aware of JoJo because I was in LA, or I grew up in Southern California, so I wasn't as aware of the New York scene.
Right.
So I kind of heard JoJo later, and he's awesome, but he wasn't like an influence for me. My guy was like Deantoni, like hearing him do that in the early 2000s.
Wow.
I was already playing a little bit of that stuff, but then hearing him, it was just like it kind of blew what I thought was possible kind of out of the water. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Another guy that I would like to talk to sometime.
Yeah.
It's the JoJo thing is crazy because I think I found out, one of my buddies said, "Hey man, there's this band, Screaming Headless Torsos.
Yeah.
They put this record out, and I think the record is called 1996. I believe that's. I would imagine that's the year it came out.
Yeah.
So I knew about them in like the mid 90s, or I knew about Jojo Mayer rather. And then one of my buddies from Louisiana moved to New York and did an audio internship, 2 of them, and it was right around the time when Jojo Mayer was starting to do like the Prohibited Beats or whatever, like during that. And he came back after the fact. He's like, dude, we're seeing we saw some crazy shit out there. There's this guy Jojo Mayer. I was like, oh, I know him. He's the guy.
Right.
And at the, so it was, I had known about him for a while. So he's always been like one of my absolute biggest influences.
Yeah, I see some I've seen a little bit of footage of that band, like, Tim LaFave playing bass and stuff like that. And it seems epic.
Yeah.
Especially for the time. It's just like so much electricity in the room and really cool.
Yeah.
So,
and that's how you pronounce LaFave?
yeah, LaFave, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was LaFever.
No, yeah, there's the R is silent. Yeah.
Okay, and
It's
there's a
fancy
B in
last
there
name.
too.
Yeah.
It's no Nate Wood or Jody Smith.
That's right. It's pretty fancy. Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, when you think about New York drummers, and you said you've been here since how long?
2010.
2010. Yeah. Okay. What are some of the guys that you enjoy seeing here on the local scene?
Oh my God, just endless.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, Nate Smith, Mark Juliana.
Yeah. I mean, Keith Carlock was one of my biggest influences too, because he was like the next in line after Zach with Wayne, and I love Wayne's music. So he was like one of my favorites, and I was like lucky enough to come out here and play with him a bunch before he moved, or before he wasn't in town as much.
Right.
But yeah, he was kind of a big guy for me to get to see, and I really love Dan Weiss's drumming. Dan Weiss he plays with Dave Binney, and but he plays he's more in the jazz scene, but he kind of does a lot of stuff, and he's a really great tabla player. But he's actually an old friend of Mark's. But yeah, he's one of the best improvisers on the drum set probably of all time. It's pretty incredible. Like he can improvise for like 4 days straight and never repeat himself, like that kind of vibe.
Really?
Just really high level stuff. So him. And then, like I kind of became aware of Mark, like when I got here, like kind of right before I got here. Yeah. And he felt like kind of a brother to me in terms, like musically. It was like, oh, we're kind of like a lot of the same influences kind of coming from the same place. And we got to play together a bunch. And and like all these guys that I got to play with on bass, I got to learn a lot from. So, playing with Mark and playing with Zach and playing with Keith and, Josh Dion and... God, it's just an endless list of amazing drummers, and Cliff
Allman,
and just kind of being like, how did you do that? Or like, what do you, how you just whatever, just questions, just being able to ask questions, like seeing things on gigs and being like, okay, I don't get how you're doing this, whatever, and just kind of picking their brain. And it's like I get to stand over them every night and just be like, I want to know what that is, or how to do that. So it's pretty cool. Wow, it's kind of a thing that like you don't really get that kind of chance unless you play multiple instruments,
Totally.
So it's really cool.
And also it's not like you wouldn't have that chance, I don't feel like, in the academic world either. You were out doing it and interacting with these guys in a live context and being able to pick their brain as to what was happening in that moment that you made a mental note of, right? And then able to ask them, and that's awesome. It is, and especially because it's in the heat of battle. It's in a musical thing where it's like I know emotionally what's happening, and then somebody makes a choice, or somebody does something technically that I'm not expecting, and that's when I can be like, hey, as opposed to watching a YouTube video that's completely out of context. You don't know what song preceded it, you don't know what song followed it, and it's probably usually just a best of reel, so there could have been like 4 weak songs before that, and then there's one great song, and it's like, what happened, Right. But I will say that
I'm noticing now that the younger generation with YouTube and stuff like that, they're getting a lot more influences than probably we had as kids,
100%. I talk to kids all the time, and I tell them the process of just acquiring information in the form of, for what was for me, was like DCI, instructional VHS tapes that I would have to go to a music store to buy and hope that someone was there to inform me as to which one would be the best one for me to get in the first place.
Yeah, right. I mean, my thing was just like, read Modern Drummer, and it's like, oh, I really like Dennis Chambers, I'm going to buy his video, or like, or I love Wayne Krantz, so I'm going to just find whatever video he's on and buy that, stuff like that. But yeah, that was it. I mean, I grew up in a family of musicians, and I grew up around musicians, so I had kind of an unfair advantage, but it was from one vantage point. It wasn't this like, jazz and beyond,
right?
Electronic music and everything, and the history of everything, It wasn't all that. It was more like focused,
Right. What was on in the house? Was there any particular recording that made you think, I want to play the drums when you heard that maybe your parents were playing?
Well, I was playing drums when I was 2.
What?
Yeah, because both my parents are musicians, and they built me a kit. And I played from ages 2 to 4. And then apparently I had very low self-confidence, so I put the kit away for 5 years and was just a kid. And then around 9, I was like, oh, there's a drum set in my closet, and I saw some old videos of me playing when I was 4, and I was like, yeah, it was pretty cool. I should do that again. So I pulled it out, and at around 9, I started again. So
wow.
Yeah, so there wasn't like a moment where it was like, oh, I heard Mahavishnu, and I was like, I got a shred, It was just around, and I was like, I like the drums when I was 2.
That is wild. What instruments did your parents play?
My dad plays, he's mostly a keyboard player, singer, songwriter, but he plays everything. He can kind of play everything. My mom is a guitar player, singer. So, and they both great musicians, both play with great musicians and have, very evolved taste and can really say what works for them and what doesn't. Yeah. And so I kind of grew up playing with them and got a lot of great insight early on. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't play that kick drum pattern on a song like this.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
Whoa.
But in a good way. Just
sure.
The things that this is kind of what works for this, and this doesn't. Not to say that you can't do it, but
it's nice to have that frame of reference.
Yeah, sure. So you could just sound 10 years older than you are immediately.
Yeah, just in maturity and understanding of what's applicable for particular music styles. Mm-hmm. Wow, dude.
Yeah, pretty cool.
When you think about your talent, what do you attribute? What is the pie chart? What is nature versus nurture? Do you feel like it's in your DNA to do this?
Well, I think it's in my DNA. Yeah,
I think it is.
I think it totally is, because I'm very one-track minded. I'm really kind of in my own world, trying to problem solve all the time. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about right now I'm having a MIDI problem with fOUR, so I'm trying to figure out how I can hack this problem that I'm having.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's one of those things that'll keep me up. It's not a computer, but that's the problem. It's not a computer problem. Because if it was a computer problem, then it could be solved. But I'm trying to do it without a computer, which nobody's doing. So it's really hard to find accessories to make things work without a computer, because they just don't really make them. But
you lose sleep over that?
I do sometimes, and I probably will now, because I'm having a malfunction. But
oh, fuck.
But yeah, I have that kind of one-track mind thing, and music is the thing that I put all my attention to. My parents weren't like, you have to be a musician. It was just that's what I wanted to do, And actually, when they saw that that's what I was going to do, they were like, oh man, you better take piano lessons, right? Because I was a drummer, and that totally backfired. But
how did it backfire?
Well, just because the teacher they got me wasn't musical. Oh. So she was teaching me just if your nails aren't making this sound, then you aren't playing the piano correctly. And I was like, how does this have to do with me playing along to Megadeth albums? Right. So when I started playing guitar, my parents were like, oh, that's good enough. You don't need a piano teacher anymore. So. Wow. But anyway, the nurturing was them being like, we really want you to succeed at this, because it's clear that you love it, so we're going to stay out of your way, but here are maybe some tools that'll help you succeed. Wow. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, you have sounds like super supportive and understanding parents.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And what's interesting as well is that it doesn't sound like you went through a rebellious period or an extended period to where you would have just ignored their insights.
No. I mean, we have a lot of the same tastes, and no, we're just good friends. Yeah, it's just kind of like that. And I'm very similar to them. It's just like nature. Very clear genetic offspring. So wow. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
And do you have siblings?
I do have a younger brother. Yeah, he's I always say this, but I think he's the most talented musician in the family, but he's not a musician.
Just he can pick it up and do it. Like
yeah, he can just. It's just easy for him. Like easier. It's kind of. I mean, maybe it's easy for me, but it's like easier for him even. You know.
Right.
But he does other things. He's a carpenter and he's a karate instructor and stuff like that. So
that's wild.
But yeah, it's just like it's definitely a genetic thing.
It's so bizarre. I come from. I mean, my mother would sing in bands and stuff like that, but no one that I know on any side of the family, going back as far as I can tell, ever played an instrument of any kind. So it was. It's just something that I kind of fell into. You know, it seems very. It was just like such a will o' the wisp type thing. It was like, hey, I'm thinking about playing bass. Maybe you could play drums type thing. That's perfect. That's where that started.
That's great.
So that was the germ, and then 26, a quarter of a century later, and I'm like, oh well, keep doing it.
Right.
Beat your head against the wall. You have good times, bad times. Still love to do it.
Right. Exactly. I feel like I don't have a choice anymore. I could just have to.
When you're not playing music, do you still enjoy listening to music?
Oh yeah,
because you're so immersed in it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people that are so immersed in it that I think they come to a stagnant place because they just don't find listening to music that enjoyable anymore.
Yeah, I don't have that.
That's good.
I think my problem is that because I master records also too during the day, that I'm listening to a lot of music just because I have to, because I'm paid to. And so a lot of times when I'm home, I don't listen to music. But then as soon as I get on the road, I'm listening to music nonstop. Yeah. And I'm enjoying every minute of it. So it's not something that annoys me. But I also think that it has a lot to do with I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to get better. So I think if you're doing that, then you're going to enjoy music more. You know? Like if you're just like, I've been playing the same rock show for 30 years in stadiums. Like I don't want to hear music. It's probably because like you haven't had to evolve, or you know what I mean? Exactly.
You don't have an outlet for it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll hear new things in music when new things in new music and old music when you're working on yourself, I think. It's probably like reading the same novel like 30 years later, And like, oh, I've evolved this way as a person, so these words mean something different to me now.
Yeah. Is there music from your childhood that you still listen today that still kind of has the same magical effect on you to the day, even if it's kind of embarrassing music?
I mean, nothing's really embarrassing, but I think that plays into things a lot, just like what we grew up. A friend of mine, this guy Richard Steckel, this great songwriter, had a theory that people like the music most that was created around the age that they were born. Because like his daughter really likes music from 1984 or whatever,
Most of the 300 plus records that I have here, I have tons of them from the mid 70s. I was born 76. Yeah. I've got tons of records from 1976.
Yeah, so I really like music from 1979.
So there you go.
Yeah, and there's something about that year, that era where there was like a combination of elements that I just still really enjoy. You know? Yeah. So I think that there's that's part of it, is just like it's not only nostalgia, but there's something else about the feeling of music. I don't know. It's so deep. We could talk about it forever. But I mean, I really liked grunge music when I was a kid, you know, and I like that stuff probably more now. I probably like Nirvana more now than I did back then, even though I loved Nirvana when I was 12 or whatever. So, and even like death metal and stuff like that, I'll put it on sometimes like, Yeah. So.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Did you you played on the Tigran? I may be mispronouncing this, but Tigran Hamasyan.
Yeah,
I got it. The Muckroot record. Is that you?
I played on the first track of that, and then the rest of it is Arthur Natek. Yeah, I played on the records previous to that.
Oh, right on.
Yeah,
that is an interesting. That it's mostly a trio, right? Mm-hmm. And it reminds me a little bit of, and I could be mispronouncing this one as well, but Avishai Cohen or Avishai Cohen. Yeah. The first time I heard Mark Giuliano was playing drums with some of that stuff, and it came over the radio when I was still living in New Orleans, and I was like, who the fuck is playing drums on this? It was the first time I'd heard him, and thankfully they announced it. Otherwise, it might have just been gone, and later on I would have never even made the connection, or maybe I would have. But I made a note of it, and I looked it up, and I was like, wow, who is this Mark Giuliano guy? This is crazy. And I got the record. And I think there's kind of to my ear, a little bit of a correlation with kind of interesting influences in the piano trio and everything, and kind of off kilter, interesting drum parts and whatnot.
Right.
How was it playing with him and in your experience with that?
Tigran is. I don't know Avishai very well. I mean, I've met him like once or twice, so I don't know if he's super specific about drum parts, but Tigran can be really specific.
Oh, really?
He's basically a drummer, like the way he plays piano, you know, and a lot of times he'll program parts for people to learn, you know, like I learned all that stuff by ear from his demos that he makes on his Roland keyboard. He still does it the same way.
Really?
And it's like he wants very specific things, you know, like I want this kick drum to feel like a 5, you know, not like a 9, you know, and like there's this very small difference there, but that Tigran hears it and he like wants it very specifically like this.
Wow.
But then there's a lot of freedom too. There's sections where it's just you do whatever, and you know, and I could play however I wanted, but as long as I played the parts when the parts needed to be played, you know.
Interesting.
But yeah, he's a super brilliant guy. So yeah, it was really cool.
Very.
And yeah, I think there's definitely some kind of relation there between Avishai and Tigran for sure.
Well, we kind of skipped over it, but going back to the Wayne Krantz thing, you played both bass and drums separately, I might add.
Yeah.
You weren't the one-man rhythm section for that
I would do
project.
both sometimes. I mean,
really?
Well, just kind of as like momentary. Like when I was first playing with Wayne, I played drums with him a little bit, and then he had a tour where I guess Tim LaFave couldn't do it, and he was like, man, maybe Nate could play bass. And he like went on YouTube and found a couple things of me playing bass and was like, he hired me to do like a 3-week tour with him and Keith Carlock.
Wow.
And then he kind of like emailed me and he's like, are you cool for this? Can you hang basically, you know? And I was like, yeah, it'll be fine, you know, but he didn't really know. So he's like, why don't we set up 2 drum sets? If you know, the bass playing is whatever, you can play drums half the time with Keith. So, but we did the first rehearsal. I played the first song on bass, and he was like, oh, this is going to be killing. You know, he was like, he knew right away, like, this is going to be fine. But we did have 2 kits on that whole tour. So sometimes I'd play both. I was hearing, like, super dense, like, rhythm, and I kind of hear both those instruments together. So sometimes I would play both.
Wow.
But not as, like, Keith would drop out, and it was just me. It was just trio, duo. You know what I mean?
Right. That's wild, man. It was fun in talking to Cliff Allman. He had mentioned that you're one of his favorite bass players for that Wayne Krantz thing, which is amazing because we also spoke about Anthony Jackson, who was the bass player that I saw on that gig and I didn't know anything about Cliff nor Anthony Jackson, so I witnessed both of them simultaneously. Yeah, and I was just like, especially, you know, I mean, across the board, the whole band was killing it. Anthony Jackson was pretty shocking to see. I mean, his command of the instrument, I was telling Cliff, and just, you get a sense like that kind of command is kind of otherworldly.
It is. Like. Yeah, he's like a classical player. He like puts the same amount of energy and attention into the instrument as like a you know, concert violinist, you know. Right. He's one of the only musicians that I've transcribed note for note. Like, I haven't really done that with drummers or basically any other instrument, but with Anthony, I've done a lot of like note for note learning what he's doing and like, what's his note value for this point? And because he's very specific about like his note values are his note values because he chose to play that note value in that bar. It's not just like an E is an E. It's like, no, an E is a dotted quarter note, or it's a, and that's what like always struck me about him is it's just like, wow, it's just so detailed, you know? So yeah, he's amazing. I got to do a couple Wayne gigs with him, and it was just.
You were on drums.
Yeah, on drums. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was amazing because I've been listening to him for so long, and just get to play with him. It's just like, wow, it's insane.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was fun also talking to Cliff about both the sort of loose framework and audibles that Wayne calls out that are like tempo related and then some dynamic. So we talked a little bit about that because as a spectator, I had seen that and I was like, what is he yelling out and what does that ultimately mean? Yeah. I would see a shift and I didn't know. It's hard to tell because there are moments of improvisation. Yep. But one of the things that Cliff had said is that the bass player is really kind of the bedrock of that trio because of the blowing sections that can happen and where the drums and the guitar can go. Yep. And the bass splits the difference. Yeah. Which the bass pretty much does, but especially in a scenario like that, which is pretty high energy and goes a lot of different places.
I kind of see the bass in that band as the frame kind of. Yes. It's like the picture is kind of the drums and the bass, which is just hella rhythm and tons of intensity. And then the bass is kind of like the scene change, you know? So it's like, sure, you can play E funk, or like you can just imply something entirely different, which is what I like to do in that band. It's like imply other harmony and give it color changes or whatever, which is kind of what Tim LaFave does too, or completely what Tim LaFave does. I got that from him. So I think the bass is a very important role in that band. And there's more bass players that can do it now because Tim has had such a huge influence on all of these electric bass players now.
Right.
Know? So there's a lot of bass players that sound great on the gig. I just did the gig last night, actually. I played drums and Evan Marion played bass. And yeah, he killed it. It was awesome.
As I'm listening to you sort of talk about all of these melodic and sort of technical aspects of playing, even like on the Wayne Krantz gig, for instance, what did you study? Did you go to school and just study music theory and everything else? Because you seem to have a pretty good grasp.
I kind of do and I kind of don't. Like I went to music school. I went to Cal Arts, which is a great school, but it's a very liberal school. It's a liberal arts college that just liberal is like all capital.
Right.
You know,
in the sense that you can determine whatever it is that you want to do there.
Yeah, you can get a lot out of it or you can get nothing out of it except like a huge student loan debt.
Right.
And possibly a drug habit. Right. I didn't get either, which is great.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. But they basically give you half the theory that other colleges give you.
Right.
And then like it's like mandatory piano lessons, but the piano teacher was like, you don't have to learn piano. You play guitar, you're fine. You know, it was just, it was like that kind of thing. So
wow.
A lot of what I know is not because of school. It's just because of listening to music and being like, oh, that's because he's doing this over that, or she's doing, you know, like,
yeah, just
kind of figuring it out on my own and kind of learning what it's called. But I'm sure school helped a little bit, but
yeah.
Also talking to my parents, you know,
right.
My mom actually did go to college, like in her adulthood for music theory.
Okay.
You know, so I think probably talking to her helped. And then being around all my jazz friends who just, you know all that stuff like the back of their hand. So
do you have like, when you think about drummers that have been an influence to you and still to this day, are there any particular ones that come to your mind that have been sort of a lasting influence? Because I certainly have my own.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like, I think Tony Williams is top. He's my favorite of all time, I think.
Yeah.
With everything being considered.
Yeah.
I think he's like, I just thought of that the other day, but he's the only drummer who's changed the instrument twice.
How so?
Well, because like his Miles Davis like jazz period.
Yeah.
Like
4 and More when he was like 18 years old,
and then
ripping.
Yeah, and then all that stuff after that, where it's just there was a level of freedom and textural stuff that has just never happened in that context ever before. And that was kind of the framework for modern jazz, was like how he played, you know.
Right.
And Elvin too, but Elvin was kind of more just of a color, you know. Tony was like a million colors and kind of understood the power of those shifts and stuff. And then when he got 2Bs and big drumsticks and kind of invented fusion, you know, like his Emergency record came out before Bitches Brew.
Wow.
So that's kind of like the real first fusion record.
Right.
And the way that he played all that language and played really loud was like, yeah, that was Billy Cobham. And then, you know, like Vinnie Colaiuta and Dave Weckl and all those guys kind of came out of
second wave of fusion.
Yeah, but they kind of all came from Tony Williams,
right.
You know? So it's like modern jazz is because of Tony, and modern fusion, whatever, is also kind of because of Tony. So it's like,
it all kind of ties back to him.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, that's how, I mean, of course there's a million other drummers, but
sure.
But he did have a huge influence in 2 points in history. So it's pretty cool.
When you first started listening to Tony Williams, could you, like to this day, I've studied jazz a little bit, or jazz drumming and jazz independence. So I know some of some of the concepts behind it.
Right.
But there's so much that Tony does that I don't totally understand how he was doing it.
Yeah.
So when you first heard it, did it seem feasible? Did you sort of have an understanding of it? Or maybe not even with the first listen, but just in a few listens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, like with drums, I never transcribed note for note or tried to figure out like, how is that person really doing that? It was more just like, oh, emotionally Tony's doing this. And that was really appealing to me, you know, like getting quiet when things should be loud, or like just playing a ride cymbal and no other instrument for a whole solo.
Right.
Or playing a solo that's like a drum solo that's just very small, you know, like very focused, and like one thing happens and you don't have to have a big blowout at the end, or you know, just all these things that
different thematic things.
Yeah, different thematic things, just things that people hadn't really done up until that point, you know?
Yeah.
But to this day, technically, there's still things that I have no idea. Like, I still hear him do stuff on records. I'm just like, what the hell is that? I have no idea. And that's what's cool. Just the magic part of it is just what's so fun to me. You know?
But I've always geared more towards form. So like really like free form stuff, like even like the Coltrane stuff. It's kind of hard for me to listen to. I don't particularly enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know that I could extrapolate some things out of it that would probably be better for my playing. But it's still hard for me to sit there and listen to it. And life is so short. I have a hard time listening for the sake of acquiring a particular knowledge out of it.
Yeah.
If I don't enjoy listening to it, I'm probably not going to listen to it.
Yeah, that's fine.
The interesting is that Tony Williams is one of the few guys, and it's on that Eric Dolphy Out to Lunch record. When I heard that, I was like, I dig this. I for one reason or another, that one resonated with me, and it certainly can be out and super bizarre.
Right.
But I that's one that I dig.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Do you enjoy sort of free form, crazy improvisational stuff?
I more like to watch it. I don't like to listen to it on record as much.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, but I love to watch it, especially if the musicians are great and I know what goes into it, and I know how hard emotionally it is to kind of navigate doing that stuff. So it's really fun to see how different people deal with it, you know?
Right. Because chemically it changes with every different person, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and also the audience changes it, and the sound of the room and all that stuff. So it's everything. It's very like, and that's why I think it's better to see it live, because it's like it's a live sport. I like structure too. I like you know, pop rock music and electronic music and stuff. Yeah, so.
It's interesting. One of the guys that I've spoken to probably the most about improvisation is my buddy Kenny Grahowski, who plays John Zorn's projects and stuff. And he's talked a lot about it, because I know, despite playing pretty extreme stuff, like full-on death metal blast beat stuff, he also exists in that kind of weird jazz improvisational world, and some of the John Zorn projects and Secret Chiefs 3 and kind of all that stuff. And it was really interesting talking to him about from his perspective, just the art of improvisation, and because it's ultimately what you're going for is very in the moment and very free, but there are certain aspects of it that there is a little bit of a framework there, or a certain understanding, or you know, something that happens.
Yeah, and certain rules too sometimes. Right. I was gonna say that, like, I'm a huge Ornette fan though. I love Ornette Coleman. I like the chaos of Ornette Coleman. He's another guy. Yeah, that's actually music that I put on and like I enjoy. Like I do just too. Really like it. But Kenny's amazing, by the way. I saw him play recently at St. Vitus, and he was with that trio that he plays with. What are they called? They wear like masks. You know? Imperial Triumphant. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so good. Ridiculous. Yeah, man, that was good. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, Kenny's crazy. He's amazing. Really, really great. But yeah, it's a whole other discipline. You know, all those things are different disciplines and different mental stuff. I mean, I've been going there because I can walk there, you know? Yeah. And just go there sometimes, and just like, I saw this crazy Polish band the other day. I wish I could remember their name. But the drummer was just like mind-blowing. Yeah. I mean, just like the amount of hours that he puts into the drums is way more than I have, for sure. And technically what he can do is way beyond what 99% of my friends can do, you know? Right. And it's this kind of like diligence and like a physical determination and stamina that's just like, wow, you know? Which is kind of the opposite of playing free in a way. For sure. Where it's like, it's more about a focused kind of patience, you know? But maybe they take the same kind of, maybe that's why Kenny can do both, because maybe there's a certain thing that is similar about them. I don't know. I think so. I've heard people say that. I think that's a really rare person that can do both. I think at a certain point in chasing such extreme music, that's just going to be, it's inevitable that you will have to dial in all these little technical nuances, and it becomes so much about that. Right. Just to be able to physically play that stuff. Right. That it becomes really hard to separate your brain and put yourself in a completely different environment. You know? So Kenny is a rare one. He is a rare one. Yeah, totally. You know? Yeah, you shouldn't really be able to do that. No, right? And it's crazy too, because, you know, some of those guys, it's all about speed. It's all about technique, and it's all about pushing BPMs. Right.
You know?
Being right on the grid, but getting faster and faster and faster. Yeah, totally. I was working on death metal when I was a 12-year-old, and I got really bad tendonitis in both my legs.
Really?
So that kind of killed that dream of, I was like, oh, I can hurt myself if I work on this. So.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so I stopped.
You were playing
doing it.
double bass?
Yeah, I had this death record called Human.
Oh, yeah.
Which.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's either Sean Reinert or Gene Hoglan.
It's Sean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean Reinert is super badass.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
His stuff
he was
on
like,
Cynic is super badass,
yeah, I love
too.
Cynic, too. Yeah. And he was like 18 or 19, I think, when he did that record.
How the hell was that guy playing that at that age?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's really astounding. And it's like, it was before MIDI triggers and all that stuff.
Right.
And I don't know I don't even think they did that to Click. I mean, now everybody's on a grid and to Click and Pro Tools, and this was just like to tape, just playing that shit, you know?
Absolutely.
It's incredible. So I was like, as a 12-year-old, I'm like, I just went straight there.
Wow.
I didn't warm up with like slow. I was just like, I want to do that. Like, that's how I learned how to play everything. It was like, I want to learn to play jazz. I'm going to play along to four and more, you know, just like, just go straight to like the top.
The most extreme.
Not like, well, you got to work on your ride cymbal pattern really slow and build. I was just like, I want to go, you know.
You're going for it.
Yeah. So I hurt myself. So.
Wow.
So I stopped doing that. Yeah.
That is an amazing story. So I know you're also doing Kneebody. Tell me a little bit about that project.
Yeah. Well, Kneebody is a band that's been around since like 2000. Our first record came out in 2005, but we've been around since 2001. It's drums, bass, keys, sax, and trumpet, and it's you know, it's kind of like a rock, funk, jazz, electronic, you know, modern jazz, basically.
Right.
Yeah, and so we've been playing together for a long time, and yeah, and when you were talking earlier about Wayne Krantz and the cues, the trumpet player for Kneebody is Shane Ensley, and he used to play with Steve Coleman, who would also do musical cues. He would play musical cues as opposed to say them out loud.
Whoa.
Like, but he only had a few, and then, you know, I'd seen Wayne do the verbal cues, and so we kind of had an idea to like really elaborate on that and make like a whole system of cues. So we have about 30 musical cues. Wow. That's like, we can tell people to stop playing, start playing, play this, use solo now, speed up, slow down, speed up to this tempo, slow down to this tempo. We're going to go to this song. Whoa. I want you to freeze these 3 bars. I want you to metrically modulate. All that's via a musical cues, not like verbal cues or like looking around and being like mouthing something, but just like a musical cue that means this. Or like on the top of the next phrase, here will be the new orchestration. It'll be bass, drums, and synth and keys and no horns or whatever. So that band kind of took the Wayne Krantz thing and took it, kind of blew it up. And also anybody in the band can do it. There's no leader. It's a democratic band. Whoa. Yeah, so anybody can cue those things.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. So, and that band was kind of my home, and that's kind of actually how I am where I am today because of that band. Because we started playing around in New York in 2005, and we're kind of semi-popular at that point. And so I think people in New York got to know me because of that band. And kind of when I got here, and also Wayne Krantz opened for us like in 2008 or 2009. Wow. And so he, you know, kind of wanted to play with me after seeing me with that band. And I got kind of Tigran's gig through that band. So kind of everything that I do now is because of that band. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, it's a cool band.
Well, I think that about covers it, Nate. Cool. Thanks for swinging by. Thanks for talking to me. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to whatever it is you got coming. I know it'll be exciting to hear whatever it may be.
Thanks.
Right on.
Right on.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Nate Wood, for hanging and talking with me. Be sure to check out his work with fOUR and Peabody, as well as any clinics, etc., that he might be doing. Any which way you can catch him live or listen to anything that he's recorded. Any and all of it is all pretty incredible. His work with Tigran, Hamasyan, the list goes on. Rippin' bass and Wayne Krantz. It's just crazy town. Dude is incredible. We'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.